Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Pablo Vieira. I am the Global Director of the NDC Partnership, and I'm very pleased to be moderating this event on the next round of NDCs. Thank you, Brazil, for inviting me to moderate this very important conversation, one of the most important conversations that are happening during COP29 on the critical need to integrate national climate policies for implementable and investable NDCs. As the Global Director of the NDC Partnership, a coalition of more than 230 members that are supporting strong climate action in more than 100 developing countries around the world, I'm very pleased to bring together two of the three countries, Brazil and the United Kingdom, a future and a former co-chair of the NDC Partnership, that have completed the development of their NDC 3.0. Setting a bar for ambition, we hope every other country will now match to put us back on track to deliver the goals of the Paris Agreement and a prosperous future for all. Beyond the level of ambition of these two NDCs, aligned with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement, these NDCs are examples of the quality that is needed for climate commitments to also be implementable and investable, something all countries need to achieve to close the gaps identified by the global stocktake last year and to deliver transformational action. After listening to countries' needs in the lead up to COP26 in Glasgow, the NDC Partnership supported almost 70 countries to deliver better quality, more realistic, and more ambitious NDCs through processes that brought in the whole of society and the whole of government and generated buy-in across all sectors, and that were informed by strong data analysis and modeling. In 2022, at the time for countries to start developing their new NDCs, the partnership consulted members once again to understand their needs. Countries remained convinced of the value of strong NDCs, but were very frustrated with the pace of implementation, mainly due to difficulties in effectively mobilizing finance for them. Countries then were very clear in terms of their need to have NDCs 3.0 that were implementable and investable. And what does this mean? Implementable NDCs need to include targets for all sectors, supported across levels of government and the whole of society. They need to link climate action with development priorities. And they have to be well-defined with clear implementable frameworks. Investable NDCs include costed actions, identified finance sources and mechanisms, and well-defined enabling laws and policies that are backed by a strong national buy-in. To guide countries in their effort to develop the new NDCs, the NDC Partnership and the UNFCCC, with input from more than 30 partners, developed the NDC 3.0 Navigator, an online tool that enables countries to identify opportunities to raise ambition and ensure NDCs are implementable. The partnership is now supporting almost 70 countries to develop their new NDCs. And we have heard from many countries during this COP that they will be reaching to us with requests for support. Importantly, countries are also seeking support to develop implementation and investment plans to accompany their NDCs. NDCs 3.0 are critical to put the world on track to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. But they need to be much more than headline ambition numbers to turn those commitments into action. As frontrunners, Brazil and the UK demonstrate that while there is no one way for doing this, there is the urgency to act now. The NDC Partnership stands ready to support developing countries to drive climate action, from Baku to Belém and beyond. So now, let's start this very interesting conversation. Let me call up to the stage our speakers. Let me start with Ms. Rachel Kite, UK Special Representative on Climate. Ms. Ana Toni, Vice Minister for Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change from Brazil. Mr. James Grabert, Director of Mitigation from the UNFCCC. and Ms. Zoe Norgett, Deputy Director of Green Finance and Capability at the Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero from the United Kingdom. We will now start with a keynote speech by one of the leaders in this very important effort from the United Kingdom on how important striving for ambitious climate action to drive economic growth and well-being is for countries like the United Kingdom. So let me give the floor now to Ms. Rachel Kite to get us started on the conversation.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's a great privilege to be here in the Brazil pavilion and alongside such a remarkable leader as António, and of course the whole ministerial lineup in Brazil is very impressive. I'm just the warm-up act for Zoe, who is a phenomenal part of the technical team in the government that is sort of making sense of how we can achieve our ambition and how to organize our NDC. So I think it's really important that, so I'm the special representative on climate, and I face outwards. My job is to support the Foreign Secretary and the Energy Secretary in our engagement internationally. But the very heart of our NDC is the transformation of our economy. It is the delivery of the promises we've made to the British people. And I think it's really important in this surrounding that we just always bring it back to our people. Our Prime Minister last week announced an ambitious NDC, 81% reduction in emissions by 2035 over 1990 levels. That's 1.5 aligned. It reflects our response to the global stocktake. And earlier today, I sat with other countries with similar ambition, both countries that have produced or announced very strong NDCs, of course, Brazil being prominent within them, but also countries that are committing here to producing similarly ambitious NDCs. And we called upon all countries to, in their response to the global stocktake, to make sure that their NDCs are 1.5 aligned, to make sure that they're all economy, to make sure they're covering all gases. So, of course, we've taken a whole of economy approach, and Zoe's going to walk you through the details of this. But the idea is that it's not just a set of targets that float outside our economic plans. It's really got to work for energy security. It has to work for the prosperity of every household in Britain. It has to work for jobs, for growth, and for investment. And, of course, it has to be 1.5 aligned. The idea is that our NDC will protect us from the future price shocks that come from a reliance on fossil fuels. It will produce cleaner air so children can go to school without the respiratory problems that plague us from the pollutants that come from a dependence on fossil fuels. And there's a wide range of social, economic, and health benefits from this NDC. And we've already seen the benefits of decarbonising our economy. We've seen low carbon investment grow from about £35 billion in 2022 to 60 billion in 2023, and we have around about 640,000 people directly employed in green jobs, with plans to create hundreds of thousands more. And I think it's really important when we look forward, it's not a straight line. We expect to see some of these progress factors move on curves which are much steeper as we get further into the transformation in our economy. We've also created a national wealth fund to kickstart greater investment, and we've delivered the most successful renewables auction in British history, with including that, or in addition, support for community-owned energy innovation as well. So that's the domestic part of it. So on the back of our domestic delivery and our domestic commitment, we feel more confident to be, as our Foreign Secretary describes us, a reliable and practical, pragmatic partner for other countries, because it will be a question of sharing how we are doing something, not do as we say, do as we do, and we can set up avenues for mutual learning. So when we talk about the ambition that we have committed ourselves to, it opens up an engagement of technical and political partnership to be able to help other countries join us on this journey. by making sure that NDCs and NDC implementation are designed as the cornerstone of inclusive, green, sustainable growth, we think that we can all begin to accelerate the journey that we're on. So the NDC partnership is a very important part of that. We're very pleased to be able to support the NDC partnership through the World Bank and UNDP with an additional £25 million commitment, which will support the work of about 40 countries in setting up their own ambitious NDCs. So as Brazil now takes up the co-chair of the partnership, we know this critical work will be in safe hands. But I want to conclude by a member of the press corps, the esteemed press corps that is here, looking at the way in which the ambition of Brazil and the ambition of the UK were both announced this week, looking at the efforts of Brazil to sort of bring us to the point where we can leave Baku and head to Belém. We've got a lot of work to do in the next 48 hours, but we are absolutely united in our commitment to come away from here with mitigation ambition, adaptation ambition, and a finance goal that represents what is needed. This member of the press corps said, "Oh, it feels like you're marrying Brazil." Well, and let me tell you, from the grey, drizzly environment of the UK, I mean, marrying a Brazilian sounds amazing. But I think that for the next year, you will see the UK and Brazil in a meaningful, deep partnership on forests, on finance, on energy, and other areas we're working together. And we could not be prouder. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kaiden, and thank you for the contribution and the support to the partnership. And I love this idea of a wedding, so happy to organize it. So we can now move to hear about from those who orchestrated the preparation of the NDCs both in Brazil and the United Kingdom, and those who are setting the vision for its implementation, which is fundamental. But first, I want to invite James Garber from the UNFCCC to speak on the critical role that NDCs play in the architecture of the Paris Agreement and what makes NDCs ambition, high quality, implementable, and investable, which are words that we've been throwing around for a year now.
Okay, well, thank you for having me today. Colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here today at this critical juncture in our climate our global climate efforts. And as the title of the event says, integrating national climate policies for implementable and investable NDCs, I think it captures very clearly the urgency and opportunity of the moment we're all in. So we do stand on the threshold of a chapter in climate action, and that is the next round of nationally determined contributions of the NDCs due next year. And this represents probably our last best chance to realign with the 1.5 goal of the Paris Agreement. The findings of last year's global stocktake and this year's NDC synthesis report, as well as emissions gap report, I think clearly leave no room for ambiguity. Ambition and implementation must go hand in hand. And for that to happen, we do need to have NDCs that are truly implementable and investable. We know all the NDCs must be ambitious, implementable, and credible if they're going to attract investment. They must chart a pathway for decarbonization, reflecting not just the scale of the challenge before them, but the vast potential for the transformation itself. And these plans must mobilize, finance, inspire the investor community, and unlock the economic opportunity, while also fostering resilience for the most vulnerable. This brings me to the exemplary leadership demonstrated by Brazil and the United Kingdom. With the call for countries to submit ambitious next round of NDCs in 2025, both of these nations have already submitted their NDCs, and they have set the pace for the global community. In their NDCs, they underline the importance of linking national climate policies with actionable investment plans. Brazil's integration of climate action with socioeconomic development exemplifies how NDCs can drive economic growth, environmental sustainability, and equity simultaneously. The United Kingdom's focus on innovative policies and a clean energy transition highlights a path both for economic and environmental benefits, which they state through their claims to attract clean energy investments, stimulate economic growth, and strengthen investor confidence in the country's climate trajectory. So as countries prepare their NDCs, I would encourage them to take the inspiration from Brazil and the UK's efforts and prioritize the three key dimensions of ambition, implementability, and investability. Of course, the UNFCCC, along with the NDC partnership and other key partners, will play our role in this endeavor, bridging the gaps and fostering the collaboration between countries and the many implementation and development organizations that are providing the support. And as you heard from Paulo, already tools like the NDC 3.0 Navigator, which we put in place with NDC Partnership earlier this year, are providing invaluable resources to nations, especially developing and vulnerable countries, ensuring no one is left behind in this global effort in the next round of NDCs. So let us harness the opportunity to ensure the NDCs become blueprints for a prosperous, sustainable, and equitable future. Let us seize this opportunity to transform ambition into action and turn climate urgency into a rallying call for hope and action. Together, we can deliver a future that honors the promise of the Paris Agreement. Thank you. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, James. And after telling us what is expected of the next round of NDCs, I think it's great to now hear a little bit more detail in terms of what Brazil and the UK have done. So it is my pleasure to give the floor now to Ms. Anna Toni to tell us a little bit more about the specifics of the process of developing the NDC and how you see the implementation moving forward.
Thank you, Pablo. It's really nice to do this together with the NDC partnership. We're really proud to be co-chairing now with Denmark, the NDC partnership, so really happy that we're doing this together. And yes, I've been married to a British person, so I'm not sure if I wanted another British marriage, but nevertheless, a nice way for UK and Brazil be together. That is absolutely, and I'm really happy that both UK, as was mentioned, have been able to come to Baku with our NDCs. And it's a way to show us, President Lula have asked us, Brazil, and I'm sure UK is the same, we want to lead by example. It doesn't mean that what we do should others be doing it the same way, because NDCs, or in our case, Aloysio, I want to acknowledge Aloysio, who is being the leading person that has coordinated our national climate plan. And that is a really hard job, yeah, Aloysio. Because for you to do that properly, you need to involve all government officials, all the different ministries, at least in Brazil, that was the way we tried to do. Because it's no longer, NDCs is no longer a niche. This is economic development. This is prosperity. This is social policies. So we needed to involve the different ministries. So in the case of Brazil, we have done that, involving 23 ministries, so everybody from the government. So I think the Brazilian government together own that. We have done that, talking to the private sector, talking to civil society, bringing the best of science that we have in Brazil. We are lucky to have the tools of scenarios and modeling. But I think one of the challenge, and I think for NDC partnership, now that NDC partnership is helping, I think 70 countries to do the NDCs, is how to do that politically. Because we all want to be really ambitious, and I think Brazil is in the same league as the UK. The problem for some countries like Brazil and the majority of countries in the world is that ambitions needs to be matched with means of implementation. We obviously are very, very ambitious because we are vulnerable, and in our case, our NDC is both about mitigation and adaptation. Adaptation, and again, seeing Inamara here, is a big role in our NDC because now we know we need to cope with both. And we need to see what is the economic package, not from outside only. In the case of Brazil, how can we redirect our national financing in order to implement what we put there? And we will need help from the international environment. And we are here in Baku debating about cooperation. And in our G20, we talked about how the economic governance is not helping on the climate governance. We need to align both governance to aim at the same place. And I think our NDC was a little bit of a that taste. That it's not lack of ambition for a country like Brazil. We do have ambition, but we also need to be firm on the means of implementation, both nationally and internationally, that will help countries. Oh, Minister Marina Silva, she's just arrived. And I can tell you all, she is like the champion of our NDC that really brought our NDC to life, and I'm sure she'll be really happy to, perhaps Minister, please, we can find another chair perhaps for our, no, that's fine. And I will wrap up because I'm sure the minister will be much more eloquent. But I was just saying, Minister, in terms of the technical work that went through, the modeling work, discussing with the different ministry, putting accounts on how much does it cost for which technology, because ambition needs to come. We know that the biggest gap is also on implementation. So we need to fulfill both gaps. The gap of ambition in terms of targets, and we hope that the next round of NDCs will be extremely ambitious for us to get and align with 1.5. But we also need to diminish the gap on implementation. And to do so, we need the means of implementation that we can gather both nationally and internationally. And here in Baku, we're doing everything we can to get the international sensitivity that we needed to align finance to 1.5. If we don't align finance to 1.5, we may align NDCs to 1.5, but they are not going to be implemented. So thank you very much, and we will hear from the minister in a minute. Thank you.